They say revenge is a dish best served cold, but sometimes it's served in a blistering storm of fists under the blinding lights of a boxing ring. What drives a man to fight not for himself, but for the honor of another? On January 22, 1988, Mike Tyson delivered an answer so powerful that it became immortalized in the annals of boxing history. This wasn't just about titles or rivalries, it was a personal mission. That night, Tyson stepped into the ring against Larry Holmes, carrying the weight of a promise he'd made as a 14-year-old boy to his idol, Muhammad Ali. Holmes had once defeated Ali in one of the most heartbreaking fights the sport had ever witnessed. Tyson, now the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, vowed to set things right. Certain moments transcend sports, becoming timeless symbols of loyalty, legacy, and redemption. Tyson's ferocious performance against Holmes wasn't just a fight, it was a tribute to the greatest and a pledge fulfilled in spectacular fashion. Muhammad Ali wasn't just a boxer, he was a phenomenon. A three-time heavyweight champion, Ali revolutionized the sport with his dazzling footwork, razor-sharp wit, and unwavering confidence. But it wasn't just his skill in the ring that made him the greatest. Ali transcended boxing, becoming a global symbol of resilience, activism, and humanity. Inside the ropes, he was untouchable in his prime, floating like a butterfly and stinging like a bee.
I tell let my trainer tell you, Bodini, come here. Bodini, tell him, what are we gonna do? You're gonna float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. Rummer, young man, rummer.
Outside of them, he stood firm in the face of adversity, refusing to be drafted into the Vietnam War, sacrificing his title and career for his principles, and advocating for civil rights. Ali wasn't merely a fighter, he was a voice for the voiceless and a beacon of hope. For young athletes, Ali represented more than victory. He was a lesson in perseverance and conviction. Among those who idolized him was a young Mike Tyson. Growing up in the tough streets of Brooklyn, Tyson found solace and inspiration in Ali's fights. Ali was a hero, a larger-than-life figure who proved that greatness wasn't just about winning, but about standing tall against all odds. But heroes, even legends, are not immune to time. By 1980, the once-dominant Ali was a shadow of his former self. Slowed by age and the onset of Parkinson's syndrome, he faced Larry Holmes in what would become one of the most painful nights of his career. Holmes, in his prime, overwhelmed the aging Ali, handing him a devastating defeat. For fans, it was more than a loss, it was a heartbreak. And for Tyson, it was a defining moment, one that planted the seeds for a promise that would one day become legendary. The build-up to the Ali-Holmes fight in October 1980 was bittersweet. For fans, it was a chance to see their beloved Muhammad Ali in the ring once more, despite whispers that he was far past his prime. Ali had announced his retirement just a year earlier, but like many greats, he couldn't resist the allure of the spotlight, or the payday. Larry Holmes, then the reigning heavyweight champion, was everything Ali no longer was. Young, strong, and sharp. Once a sparring partner of Ali's, Holmes had enormous respect for the greatest, but in boxing, respect doesn't win fights. Holmes entered the ring as a heavy favorite, while Ali carried the hopes of millions who wished to see him defy the odds one last time. The fight itself was painful to watch. From the opening bell, it was clear that Ali's reflexes, speed, and stamina had diminished. Holmes landed punch after punch, his jabs carving through Ali's defense. Ali, always the master of mind games, tried to taunt Holmes, calling him names and daring him to hit harder. But the once unshakable confidence was no longer backed by the physical ability to deliver. By the 7th round, the audience's cheers turned into uneasy silence. They weren't watching the invincible Ali they had once adored. They were witnessing a legend being dismantled. In the 10th round, Ali's corner mercifully stopped the fight, sparing him further punishment. It was the first time Ali had ever been stopped in his career. Holmes didn't celebrate. As the victor, he raised his arms briefly but showed no elation. "It hurt me to do that to him," Holmes later said. "I didn't want to fight him, but I had to." For the boxing world, the fight marked the end of an era. For Tyson, who watched the bout as a young teenager, it was a turning point. Seeing his hero beaten so decisively filled him with a fire that would burn for years. That night, Tyson made a silent promise. One day, he would avenge Muhammad Ali. Mike Tyson's journey to the pinnacle of the boxing world is one of the most iconic stories in the sport's history. An explosive rise from a troubled youth to becoming the youngest heavyweight champion of all time. Born in Brooklyn, New York, Tyson's early life was filled with hardship. Raised in poverty and surrounded by violence, he found himself entangled in street life by the time he was a teenager. By age 13, Tyson had already been arrested multiple times, and it seemed as though his life was destined to follow a downward spiral. However, it was during his time in a juvenile detention center that a new path was forged for him. While incarcerated, Tyson's raw talent for boxing was discovered by a counselor who'd once been a boxer himself. This discovery led to Tyson being introduced to the legendary trainer Cus D'Amato, a man who would become not only his mentor, but also a father figure. D'Amato saw potential in Tyson that few could recognize, shaping his discipline and focusing his fierce energy into something constructive. Under D'Amato's guidance, Tyson's life began to change. D'Amato instilled in Tyson the importance of self-belief, mental toughness, and above all, an unwavering dedication to the sport. Tyson's admiration for Muhammad Ali grew out of these early lessons. Ali, with his unapologetic confidence, unparalleled boxing skills, and larger-than-life personality, became a guiding light for Tyson. The stories of Ali's battles inside and outside the ring were a constant source of inspiration for him, especially as he rose through the ranks of boxing. Tyson wasn't merely a fan of Ali. Ali was the standard he set for himself, the legacy he hoped to one day carry on. By 1986, Tyson's rise in the boxing world was meteoric. Known for his brutal knockout power, unmatched speed, and relentless aggression, Tyson bulldozed through the heavyweight division. His opponents fell quickly, many in the early rounds, as Tyson carved a path of destruction, earning a reputation as the most feared fighter in boxing. The world watched in awe as Tyson's dominance continued, and by November 1986, at the age of 20, Tyson made history by defeating Trevor Berbick to become the youngest heavyweight champion in history. The sports world was stunned. Tyson was now a force to be reckoned with, and his rise to stardom was only just beginning. However, Tyson's success wasn't simply about winning belts or gaining fame. He had something deeper driving him, something that went beyond the accolades. Tyson carried a purpose with him, a promise he made to himself as a teenager, to avenge Muhammad Ali's loss to Larry Holmes. It wasn't just about the titles or money for Tyson. His admiration for Ali and his fierce desire to honor his hero's legacy became his driving force. He had watched as Ali, one of his idols, face the heartbreaking defeat to Holmes in 1980. In 1988, Tyson was more than ready. Having unified the heavyweight titles and defeated the biggest names in the sport, he stood on the cusp of greatness. Yet, there was one thing left: facing Larry Holmes. Tyson's trainer, Don King, worked tirelessly to make that fight happen, recognizing that Holmes, though past his prime, still held significance in the boxing world. Tyson was hungry, not just for another win, but for the chance to fulfill a promise he'd made to himself as a young fighter. Holmes, the former heavyweight champion, had retired in 1986 after a disputed loss to Michael Spinks. But Tyson's name was too big to ignore. The financial lure was irresistible, and with a $3 million offer on the table, Holmes agreed to come out of retirement to face Tyson. It wasn't just about reclaiming the title for Holmes, it was about pride, revenge, and the chance to prove himself once again. Tyson's pursuit of Holmes wasn't just another fight in his ascent to the top. It was the culmination of years of emotional investment, fueled by the desire to pay homage to Ali and right or wrong. Tyson had seen Holmes as the man who had beaten his idol, and now, in 1988, Tyson was going to show the world what he was made of. The stakes were high. Tyson wasn't just fighting for his titles. He was fighting to fulfill the promise that had kept him going all these years. The boxing world buzzed with anticipation. Would Tyson's raw power and aggression be enough to defeat the man who'd once been the heavyweight champion? Would he avenge Ali's loss and show the world that Tyson was more than just a powerful knockout artist, but a fighter with a purpose? As the days counted down to the fight, Tyson's preparation was intense, his focus unwavering. In the build-up to the fight, Holmes talked a lot of trash, trying to get into Tyson's head. He criticized Tyson's style, calling him a dirty fighter, accusing him of using elbows, headbutts, and fighting unfairly. But Tyson, fueled by his determination to avenge Ali's loss, remained calm and focused, understanding that all of Holmes' words were simply tactics. For Tyson, this wasn't just about winning another fight, it was personal. He wasn't fighting for just a title or fame, he was fighting for Ali's honor. And then, the moment came. Tyson, the young lion, prepared to face the old lion, Larry Holmes, in what was expected to be a brutal and unforgettable battle. The hype surrounding the fight was electric, but Tyson had one goal in mind: to fulfill the promise he'd made all those years ago. As the bell rang to begin the fight, Tyson's moment of reckoning had arrived. Would he defeat Holmes and avenge Ali's loss, or would Holmes, the veteran, pull off a shock upset? The stage was set for a fight that would etch both men's names into the annals of boxing history. Stay tuned as we dive into the fierce battle between Tyson and Holmes in the next chapter. Believe it or not, January 22, 1988 wasn't just another fight night. It was a date that would etch itself into the history books. Mike Tyson, the youngest heavyweight champion the sport had ever seen, was on top of the boxing world. Yet there was something different about this night, something deeper at stake. What if I told you that Tyson wasn't just defending his title, but fighting for something far more personal? Larry Holmes, the former heavyweight king, had been retired for nearly 2 years, but he wasn't done. Despite his age and despite the relentless force Tyson had become, Holmes was convinced he still had what it took to reclaim the crown he once wore. So in a twist of events, Holmes made a comeback, stepping into the ring to face the new champion, eager to prove that he was still the best. For Tyson, this was more than just a fight. It was about honoring a promise he had made years before when he first looked up to the legendary Muhammad Ali. Ali, the man Tyson had always idolized, was seated ringside that night, watching his protege with a keen eye. Tyson wasn't just fighting for himself, he was fighting in Ali's name, carrying the weight of history on his shoulders. As surprising as it sounds, Holmes thought he could beat the younger Tyson. But what he didn't know was that Tyson had become an unstoppable force, a freight train of power and speed. From the opening bell, Tyson's relentless assault had Holmes struggling to keep up. Tyson moved like a predator, his every punch landing with the speed of a whip and the power of a sledgehammer. Holmes, the former master tactician, was forced into a defensive shell, unable to find his rhythm against Tyson's ferocity. Holmes tried his best to jab, to keep Tyson at bay, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a pebble. Tyson moved in, cutting off the ring, getting closer and closer with each exchange. Holmes, even with his experience, couldn't find a way to slow Tyson down. In the fourth round, Tyson finally did what everyone in the arena had been waiting for. He unleashed a series of thunderous punches, and before Holmes could react, he was on the canvas. The crowd gasped. Holmes, however, wasn't ready to give up just yet. With surprising resolve, he rose to his feet. It wasn't over. Not yet. But what if I told you that Holmes' comeback wouldn't last long? Tyson, relentless as ever, surged forward with a fury that would not be denied. A right hand sent Holmes to the canvas once again. He got up, shaken but determined. The referee counted, and Holmes barely made it back to his feet at the count of 8. In a twist of events, Holmes somehow found himself back on the defensive again, with no answer to Tyson's onslaught. Tyson's punches came faster, harder, and more accurate than ever. With just 7 seconds left in the round, Tyson delivered one final devastating blow. A right hook that dropped Holmes for the 3rd time. This time, the referee didn't hesitate. The fight was over. And just like that, Tyson was declared the winner by technical knockout, a decisive victory that left no doubt about who was the true king of the ring. The crowd erupted into applause as Tyson stood tall, his fists raised in triumph, knowing he had not only defended his title, but also fulfilled a promise made to a legend. In the hours following the night, as the crowd buzzed with excitement, Tyson's words echoed through the arena. "I told you I'd get him back for you." For Tyson, this victory was about fulfilling a promise he'd made as a young boy, one that had kept him motivated during his rise to greatness. But it was also about more than belts and accolades. It was about showing the world that despite the brutal nature of the sport, there were moments of deep respect, legacy, and honor that went beyond competition. Tyson's tribute to Ali was especially poignant given the nature of their relationship. Ali, a pioneer in boxing and a social and political force, had inspired countless athletes, including Tyson, who saw him not just as a boxer, but as a symbol of strength, conviction, and resilience. The night Tyson defeated Holmes, he wasn't just avenging Ali's loss to Holmes in 1980, he was continuing Ali's legacy in his own way. For Muhammad Ali, the moment was both bittersweet and moving. He'd watched as Tyson tore through the heavyweight division, dominating opponents with a ferocity that mirrored the very spirit Ali once embodied. The night Tyson won, it was clear that Tyson wasn't just the future of boxing. He was the future of the legend Ali had built. Tyson's victory was also significant because it marked the passing of the torch from one era to the next. Holmes, the man who had defeated Ali in 1980, had been a symbol of a more traditional style of boxing. But Tyson, with his power, speed, and unrelenting aggression, was the embodiment of a new breed of fighter. Tyson's win solidified his place as the most dominant force in boxing, but it also cemented his connection to the sport's rich history. In a single moment, he bridged the gap between the old guard and the new. But Tyson's victory wasn't just a passing of the torch in terms of boxing styles. It was about legacy. Ali had long since passed the mantle of his athleticism to Tyson, a fighter who, in many ways, embodied Ali's own approach to boxing. Relentless, unpredictable, and fearless. Tyson's triumph over Holmes was a tribute to that shared spirit, and it reaffirmed Ali's influence on the sport, ensuring that his legacy would live on in a new generation of fighters. Tyson's win over Holmes was the final chapter in a long-running saga between two greats of the sport. Ali's career had ended in heartbreak, but Tyson's victory offered a sense of closure, not just for the boxing community, but for fans who'd watched Ali's demise and longed for justice. The fight was a poetic ending to a story that had been years in the making. However, for Tyson, the journey was far from over. The win over Holmes was just one piece of his legacy, and his career would continue to unfold in dramatic and unpredictable ways. But as Tyson stood victorious in the ring that night, with Ali at his side, it was clear that Tyson had already secured his place in history. Not just as a champion, but as the man who had avenged his idol, the man who had fulfilled a promise.